Sadly, Russian narratives are prevailing in the U.S. How is it possible to witness our losses and our suffering, to understand what the Russians are doing, and to still believe that they are not the aggressors, that they did not start this war?
When he mentioned Greenland, like it was a toy or something.
You noticed that?
We all noticed that in Greenland, all of us. And it was ugly.
Those 60 Minutes interviews set off the president last night. He called CBS, quote, out of control, and he suggested they pay a big price. Quote, they should lose their license, he said. Hopefully, the federal chairman, Brendan Carr, will impose the maximum fines and punishment, which is substantial for their unlawful and illegal behavior. Joining us now, senior fellow for Middle East and Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, Stephen Cook. You know, these two stories in and of themselves are worth talking about, the president's desire to take over Greenland and what's happening in Ukraine right now. But part of the bigger story here is that he's going after media organizations and journalists for going out there and reporting, for doing interviews, for asking people questions. What is the goal of doing this? Why would a president want to get angry with the media organization in such a way?
Well, Katie, this is right out of the authoritarian playbook. For as much time that I've spent living in and working on the Middle East, I have seen things that are very, very similar to this. This is the way in which authoritarian leaders gain control over the messaging in their societies, is that they intimidate journalists, they intimidate media outlets, they use their friends, they use to buy media outlets, and they use, importantly, as Trump is suggesting in his Truth Social post, to use the state to punish media organizations that they don't like. This is incredibly familiar for Middle East analysts.
So once they are able to successfully control the narrative, largely, or at least to intimidate journalists into towing the line, what happens then?
Well, then the population of these societies only get one side of the story. And if you are told things over and over and over again, and you're not curious, you tend to believe those things. In addition, if in the public square you contradict those official narratives, you can end up in jail. So this is, again, something that is it is quite familiar and quite disturbing to see the president going after independent media, reporting on his policies on Ukraine, reporting on his policies on Greenland, as you suggested, setting aside the importance of those stories. The fact that he is attacking a media organization because he doesn't like what they said is Erdogan-esque. It reminds me of the time when I lived in Egypt for a long period of time under Hosni Mubarak. These were the kinds of things that would happen in those settings, not something that we're used to here in the United States.
Let me ask you about something that you and I talked about last week when we were listening to an Oval Office back and forth between reporters and Donald Trump. He mentioned that there was going to be Iranian talks on Saturday. Well, Saturday has since passed. The administration has called those talks productive. What does productive mean?
Well, it means that they agreed to have another set of talks, which will happen this coming Saturday in Rome. There was enough agreement and enough that the negotiators believed was worthwhile for them to talk about in terms of Iran's nuclear program, its support for proxies, and its missile program, that the negotiators decided that they could continue those talks. My sense is, however, that at some point, if the Trump administration maintains its requirements, the dismantling of Iran's nuclear program, the end of support for proxies, and the reining in of Iran's missile program, these talks will run into roadblocks.
All right, Stephen Cook, got to leave it there. Thank you very much.